Greetings to everyone. My name is Ntsoaki Phali, and I'm from titled Beyond Ability Talent Solutions. And in our case, what we usually do is that we find jobs for people with disabilities. At the same time, it also goes beyond that as well. What we do, we ensure that persons with disabilities work in barrier-free or accessible environments, and we do that by ensuring that we conduct disability scans and present the findings of those scans or audits to the corporate company or to the employer, such that an employer can remove that have been identified from those audits. But over and above that, another issue that we also do is that we also sensitize employers on how to relate to people with disabilities. And so we cover those subjects, and in certain instances, we cover a bespoke sensitization depending on a client's competence on disability subject. And I really would like to thank the Tropics Business Summit for hosting us and for also ensuring that the topic or the concept of universal design forms part of this year's summit. And really, it's a very pertinent and important topic at this time in our lives, whereby, for instance, we saw a situation whereby persons with disabilities were at a high risk of transmissions. And what that meant that persons with disabilities now persons with disabilities must now access most of their services digitally. And obviously, it also means that whichever platforms that persons with disabilities are accessing, it means that those digital platforms must be accessible for persons with disabilities, which brings the topic of universal design. And if you think of it, Ron Mays coined the concept of universal design because of he felt it important for all buildings or for environments or for products to be accessible for all people. So it basically means that whether you are a senior citizen, whether you are a person with disability, or regardless of your creed or your background, whichever product or environment that you interact with must be accessible for you. And it means that any product that is designed or that is innovated, it must be usable to the great extent by everyone. And really, this is where we find ourselves at this point in time. I mean, we saw even during COVID-19, we saw a situation whereby there was the infodemic. And with the infodemic, it was a situation whereby, for instance, there was all sorts of communication, all sorts of information which was disseminated to everyone. But it's important that even that information as well, even like now, even post the COVID-19 world, it's important that information or any communication is accessible for all, and it's barrier free. So really, where I'm at right now, in a position whereby, for instance, I'm continually encouraging developers or designers or innovators to actually allow persons with disabilities to be at the forefront of those conversations, to be part of those or innovation discussions, because we've seen situations whereby persons with disabilities have always had uh, innovations or product imposed on them, and they didn't participate, maybe say in the testing, in the conceptualization, or maybe the piloting or the pivoting of those products. And for us, we're of the view that every design must meet the universal design principles. And universal design principles mean that a product must be equitable, it must be flexible, it must be also simple as well. It At the same time, it must have low tolerance for error. And you can only achieve those principles if, for instance, even at the point in time whereby you were conceptualizing that particular innovation, you had the target or the end users participating in the conceptualization, participating in the testing, participating right up until to the delivery of that particular innovation. So really, but on another token as well, we are encouraged by the design for all innovations that we've been seeing recently. I mean, in certain instances, we've seen driverless cars being introduced into the market, and really for us, that's really exciting because because of it. It's basically saying that innovators are getting the idea of designing for all. They're getting the idea of designing products barrier free. However, on the concept of universal design as well, we are also encouraging, say, innovators or building or organization leaders as well to also try and or maybe for awareness to be heightened around the subject of universal design, because of we see a situation whereby, for instance, I mean, building owners, facility owners, or maybe just innovators in certain instances, they in as much as they are designing, persons with disabilities are not conversant of the products and so it's an education piece that's also important. So it's good and all to introduce new concepts to the market, concepts that will benefit persons with disabilities, but it's also another one when persons with disabilities are not yet aware of the availability of those products. But over and above availability, you're also looking into affordability of those products as well. So it's one thing for products to be available in the market, but it's another when the very users or those who must benefit from those innovations or designs are not cannot afford those products or those initiatives. And also another thing as well. I mean, there's also an important piece around education. I mean, you see that in as much as there are those who are putting their best foot forward around innovating universally for persons with disabilities, but there's also that concept, that piece as well. But for instance, there are those who are still not coming to the party, and in our case, we are encouraging designers or building managers or innovators to start designing with diversity in mind, and designing for humans. And our view is that if you're designing for humans, you are designing for any living being, careless of their background, careless of their age, careless of their social strata. You are designing for the dynamism or for the diversity of all mankind. And at the same time, when you are universally designing, your aim is to not exclude anyone. Your aim is not to prejudice on anyone. Your aim is to equalize treatment and promote and protect the rights of those who have been marginalized. So, really, our other plea as well, is that of social inclusion, whereby we're encouraging all designers to continually, and to be deliberate about social inclusion. So, to continually include everyone in their innovation, or any concept that they're introducing to the market, so as to equalize treatment and embrace the diversity of all mankind. And really, for us, we are encouraging a situation whereby, for instance, we're not leaving anyone behind. No one should be left behind. Any product, any environment, any situation must not perpetuate barriers, but in a way, actually, must work hard at breaking those barriers. So we know that for a very long time, persons with disabilities have always experienced attitudinal barriers, have always experienced communication barriers, have always experienced transportation barriers. They've always experienced social barriers as well, and also programmatic barriers. And really, we are in an era whereby we're not supposed to be having conversations around breaking barriers. We're at a point where, for instance, I mean, all of us must fully understand the concept of universal design. So, and it goes back to the point that I made earlier on around the education piece that is important around inclusive design. That where we're at right now, we must continually be deliberate about empowering ourselves around inclusive designs, so as to break barriers, so as to socially include everyone, and not exclude or not prejudice everyone. What is also important as well is that persons with disabilities must be at the heart of all innovations. And all innovations are people centered. We've seen situations whereby, you know, innovations or designs are imposed on society. And really, for us, that's also an important piece. That's an important piece around universal design. So if you are developing any concept, if you are starting any concept, ensure that people are at the center. Do not treat people as a part of the process, but design with the end in mind, and the end being those who are supposed to benefit from that innovation. And what is really encouraging for us around the concept of universal design is the fact that certain barriers, especially the barriers that are usually experienced in the rural areas, those barriers will be broken, because as it stands currently in South Africa, we have a situation whereby ambulance cannot access certain rural areas due to the landscapes of that area, or maybe where that family is positioned. And if you think of it, with the introduction of 4IR, we see those divides being broken. However, as we are addressing the concept of universal design, or improving technology just to improve people's lives, there's also another concept as well, whereby, for instance, there's a digital divide. And we've been talking of the concept of digital divide, and our hope is that each and every innovation right now will also take into consideration, the digital divide, because of you find that even in rural areas, there are certain areas whereby, for instance, there's poor connectivity, there's poor bandwidth, and persons with disabilities cannot even maybe access that communication, or maybe an effective network. But what's exciting, it's the fact that, and also in our research as well, we realized that with the introduction of 4IR, certain services will be in areas that have always been not so easy to access. There's a cancer innovation that we also recently experienced, whereby, for instance, a robot could be placed anywhere in the world, and that robot uh, uh, could be able to diagnose a patient from anywhere in the world. So obviously, it means that those landscape or those infrastructural challenges that people with disabilities in the rural areas are usually facing could be minimized. But where we are sitting and where we're at a point where, for instance, we are campaigning and advocating for design for all. We of the belief that design for all accommodates everyone, leaves no one behind, and understands the diversity of all humans, and one of its aim is to socially include everyone. That being said, I think this is where I will be leaving my talk, and really, I'm grateful to Tropics Business Summit community. Really, even in my case as well, I got to be exposed to the other platforms, and really, it has been empowering to me personally. But thank you, Tropics Business Summit, for this opportunity, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.